Do you believe people can really change? Or do they just get better at hiding things?
It's strange how the biggest family explosions can start with something as harmless as a damn crockpot. I wasn't even trying to be difficult that day. I simply mentioned that I'd be bringing store-bought potato salad to Mom's Sunday dinner, the way I've done for the past 6 or 7 years, because I had work deadlines and I didn't have time to cook. That one message, dropped into our family group chat like a pebble in a pond, somehow set off an earthquake. Emily, my younger sister by nearly 15 years and somehow already the self-declared queen of family virtue, replied within 30 seconds, dripping with that signature passive-aggressive tone she's mastered since high school. "Oh wow, store-bought again? No worries, I'll just make extra for the kids since they prefer homemade anyway." She added one of those smiley face emojis with a halo, her classic way of pretending she wasn't being a complete brat. And sure, I could have let it go. I could have scrolled past and moved on with my day. But something in me that morning, after years of swallowing my tongue and smoothing things over, decided, not this time. So I replied, not angry, just direct. If I'd known this was a potluck audition, maybe I wouldn't have volunteered to host Thanksgiving last year while you were too busy rebranding your store. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even use a single exclamation point. But I could already feel the tension swell as I watched the little typing dots appear under her name. Emily came back fast, and she came back hard. God, Leah, do you hear yourself? You're always negative. Always the victim. It's exhausting. Maybe if you weren't so toxic, people would actually want you around. And just like that, the word hung there on the screen, suspended between my family and me like a loaded weapon. Toxic. That word, so carelessly thrown, carried more poison than she probably even realized. It wasn't just an insult. It was a rewriting of history. It was a label, a diagnosis even, and the silence that followed from the rest of the family only confirmed what I hadn't wanted to admit for years. They agreed with her, or worse, didn't care enough to disagree. Mark, our brother, said nothing. Not even his usual, "Hey guys, can we cool it?" Nothing from Mom either, who had responded to the dumbest things in that chat over the years, a dropped casserole dish, a parking space dispute, even one of Emily's toddler's potty training updates, but now nothing. It was like the entire family was just waiting to see how I'd react, maybe even hoping I'd prove Emily right by blowing up. But I didn't blow up. I didn't type another word. I sat there staring at that little screen, thumb hovering over the keyboard, my heart pounding not with rage, but with clarity. A clarity I hadn't felt in years. And as much as it hurt, something inside me snapped in the cleanest, calmest way possible. I realized I had been financing and emotionally buffering a family that had no problem turning on me the second I stopped being useful. So no, I didn't respond in the chat. I didn't call Emily names, didn't try to win anyone over, didn't defend myself. I just closed the app, opened my laptop, logged into the Shopify dashboard for Willow and Hearth, the online home decor store Emily runs, and I stared at the admin panel that I had access to because I helped her build it from scratch 5 years ago. I had paid for the domain. I handled the initial taxes. I wrote the product descriptions, created the SEO, set up the payment system. I built her business while she played entrepreneur on Instagram. And now, since she was so confident calling me toxic, I figured it was only fair that she learn what her business looked like without me behind the curtain. I didn't rage. I didn't plot. I simply flipped the store status to unavailable. Not deleted, not destroyed, just offline. A temporary timeout. A gentle nudge. A reminder. See, people don't think twice about the things they rely on until those things stop working. And for years, that's what I had been to them, the thing that always worked. The one who booked the family trips and paid the deposits. The one who babysat without being asked. The one who sent flowers on birthdays and always remembered Aunt Donna's gluten allergy. But I did it quietly, without a spotlight, so they forgot it was effort. They started calling it just Leah being Leah, like it required no energy, no thought, no sacrifice. And when someone treats your love like a utility, always on, always reliable, they stop recognizing it's a choice. I chose to be the responsible one for too long. And in that silence after Emily's message, I chose something else. Distance. Not revenge. Not punishment. Just attachment. Of course, I knew it wouldn't take long for her to notice the website was down. I wasn't trying to be sneaky. I was just done. And not in a dramatic, performative way. I was done in the way women get done after carrying too much for too long and realizing that nobody, not even the people you think should know better, will ever stop taking until you start saying no. So I shut down the tab, made myself a cup of coffee, and sat by the window while my phone buzzed with more silence. This wasn't war. Not yet. This was the first stone. A silent one. And I had a few more to throw. There's a particular kind of irony that creeps into your bones when someone accuses you of being toxic while standing atop the very foundation you built for them with your own two hands, unpaid, uncredited, and, for the most part, unappreciated. That night, after I shut down Emily's store with the silent flick of a toggle switch on the back end, I sat in my living room with the lights off, watching the cursor on my screen blink as if it were mocking me, tapping out a beat I'd ignored for far too long. And no, I wasn't stewing in some self-righteous rage or plotting the next move like some cartoon villain twirling her hair and sipping red wine. I was just still, finally, absolutely still, in a way I hadn't been since the day I offered to help my sister start her business, back when she was fresh off maternity leave and dripping with desperation masked as ambition. I remember the phone call like it was yesterday, her voice cracking on the other end as she described how she couldn't go back to her office job, how daycare costs more than her entire salary, how she had this vision of a shop that sold curated home items, pillows, rustic signs, handmade mugs with whimsical fonts. It sounded like a Pinterest board married a farmer's market. I thought it was sweet. I thought, maybe for once, she had found something that gave her life shape. So I said yes. I said I'd help. And I didn't say yes the way people do when they offer lip service at brunch. I said yes with my time, my money, and the professional experience I spent 20 years accumulating in marketing, branding, and e-commerce. She didn't know how to build a website, so I did. She didn't understand the difference between net and gross income, so I walked her through every spreadsheet line by line. She wanted a logo that looked cozy but not corny, and I made 5 drafts until she picked one and then changed her mind a week later. I set up her Stripe account, installed the plugins, handled the initial customer support through the business email account I created for her. For the first 6 months, I even wrote the damn Instagram captions because she said she couldn't think straight with the baby screaming in the background. And not once, not one single time, did I send her an invoice or ask for a favor in return. I didn't even put my name on the site. I figured that's what family does. I figured, naively, that my contributions would speak for themselves. But that's the thing, isn't it? When you're the quiet helper, the one who steps up without being asked, your silence becomes a trap. You think you're earning respect, but what you're actually doing is training people to expect your sacrifice as standard. Over time, they stop seeing it altogether. Your name disappears, but your labor remains. That's how Emily started acting like the business was hers alone, like she'd climbed the hill herself, with no one behind her clearing the damn path. So yes, I shut it down. I shut it all down. And I did it not out of vengeance, but out of necessity. Because the moment she called me toxic in front of our family, the same family that watched me help her rise while they clapped for her success like she'd done it all solo, I realized she genuinely believed it. She didn't just say it in a fit of frustration. She meant it. She saw me as some bitter, rigid figure looming on the outskirts, always judging, never giving, when in reality I'd been the scaffolding behind her storefront dream. The next morning, the messages started trickling in. First, it was a casual "Hey, is the site down?" Then came the frantic one, "Leah, my site's not loading. Are you seeing this too?" I didn't respond. I just watched. She called twice that afternoon. Straight to voicemail. She texted again by evening. "If you're doing something to the back end, just let me know." I'm freaking out. I still said nothing. Meanwhile, I opened my email inbox and found the old travel itinerary I'd booked for our family vacation. A long postponed trip to Florida that I had quietly arranged and fully paid for as a sort of peace offering after the last round of family drama over Christmas, when Mark's wife accused me of never being around for the kids. And Mom cried because I didn't stay the night at her house. The flights were booked under my account. My credit card. My name. I called the airline that night. The hold music was scratchy and robotic, but I waited. When the rep picked up, I gave them the reservation number and said, calmly, that I wanted to cancel all but one ticket, mine. She asked if I'd like a refund or credit. I took the refund. Not because I needed the money, but because the symbolism was too perfect to resist. I was pulling the plug. On the trip. On the fantasy. On the idea that I could keep showing up, being useful, swallowing their pettiness, and rewriting their insults as misunderstandings just because we share a last name. 2 hours later, Emily texted again. Did you cancel the flight? This time she didn't bother with emojis or softening phrases. She knew. And that was the beauty of it, I didn't have to say a word. She knew exactly how far she had pushed me. She just never thought I'd push back. You'd think someone would have called by now. Mark, maybe? Or Mom. But silence, like I said, is contagious. They watched it unfold, and instead of asking questions, they closed their eyes and hoped it would fix itself. That's always been their move. Keep the peace, even if the foundation is cracked. Smile in photos, even if someone's bleeding just outside the frame. Well, this time, the person bleeding got up, walked away, and locked the door behind her. And if that makes me toxic, so be it. But I know what I built. And I know what I finally let go of. There's a moment, usually about 2 days after you decide to burn a bridge, where the smoke finally starts to reach the people on the other side, and when it does, they don't ask why you lit the match or how long you stood there soaked in gasoline, begging for them to notice. They just cough, choke, and start screaming about the fire. And that's exactly what happened on the second morning after I shut down Emily's store, canceled the family's flight tickets, and effectively removed myself from the quiet little puppet show we had all been starring in for years without ever realizing we were actors trapped in the same script. I had just gotten out of the shower, towel twisted in my hair, coffee half brewed, when my phone lit up with a single message from Mark, my brother, the one person who I thought might at least pretend to understand nuance, or at the very least ask me a question before taking a side. But no, the message was short, sharp, and soaked in accusation. What did you do? Mom's in tears. No greeting. No, are you okay? Or I heard there's some stuff going on. Just straight to blame. And maybe I shouldn't have been surprised, because Mark has always been the kind of man who lives in the middle of the road, clutching his peacekeeper badge like it was earned instead of inherited by virtue of being the only son. The one Mom always said had a gentle heart just because he didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Women like Mom and Emily did the crying for him, and I did the fixing. I stared at his message for a long time, letting the silence in my kitchen wrap around me like armor, wondering if I should bother defending myself or if I should just block him and be done with it. But then I remembered that old family rule we never said out loud but lived by religiously: whoever cries first wins. And Mom, true to form, had apparently beaten me to it. The image of her crying, though, it didn't hit me the way it used to. I didn't feel the pull of obligation or guilt, not the way I used to when I was younger and still believed that love meant sacrificing your boundaries in favor of someone else's emotional weather. I knew her tears. I had seen them used like punctuation marks during every major family disagreement, wielded with the precision of someone who never learned to express anger outright, but perfected the art of sadness as weapon. I'm not saying she faked it. I know the pain was real. I know she felt betrayed, but the betrayal she felt wasn't because I had done something cruel. It was because, for the first time in decades, I had stopped cushioning everyone else's feelings with my own silence. And so I did respond to Mark, but only with one sentence, and I typed it slowly, deliberately, knowing it would crack the fragile narrative they had started to spin in my absence. Ask Emily who paid for the damn tickets. I hit send and didn't wait for a reply. Later that afternoon, as the sun started to drop and the golden light turned everything outside my window that dull, sleepy orange, I got a voicemail from Mom. Her voice was thin, trembling, the sound of someone who has rehearsed what they're going to say and still can't say it right. She started with a soft, "Hi, sweetheart," then paused like she was already second-guessing herself. I don't know what's going on, but this isn't like you. Please, just talk to me. I know Emily can be, well, I know you two have always been different. But don't ruin the family over this. Don't disappear. We need you." And, just like that, the guilt tried to creep in, slithering its way through the cracks she left in her voice, trying to reattach itself to the part of me that used to fold at the first sign of her disappointment. But something had shifted. It wasn't that I didn't care, I did. I cared deeply. That was the problem. For too long, I had cared without limits, without boundaries, without any reciprocal consideration for the quiet devastation it was doing to me inside. They all needed me, yes, but only in the ways that suited them. They needed me to pay for things without mentioning the cost. They needed me to show up without asking for gratitude. They needed me to bite my tongue when Emily made little jabs, and to play the bigger person when Mark forgot my birthday, and to shrug it off when Mom forgot, again, that I don't drink sweet tea. My entire identity had become a balancing act between not upsetting them and not losing myself, and for the first time in my adult life, I had chosen the latter. I didn't call Mom back. I didn't reply to Emily's increasingly frantic texts. I didn't explain myself to Mark. I let the silence do what it needed to do. And in that silence, something remarkable happened. The air in my home started to feel different. Lighter. As if all the invisible strings they had tied to me over the years had finally snapped, one by one, and I was floating just slightly above the weight of all that unspoken responsibility. Still, I won't lie and say it didn't hurt. It did. It hurt in that deep, bone-level way that only family can hurt you, the kind of pain that doesn't come from a single moment, but from the slow erosion of trust, year after year, conversation after conversation, slight after slight, until suddenly you look around and realize you've been bleeding for years from wounds they insisted didn't exist. And yet, I didn't feel regret. I felt clarity. The kind that only comes when you stop trying to be understood by people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Because the truth is, I hadn't changed. I hadn't snapped. I hadn't become some cold-hearted villain. I had simply stopped pretending. I had finally made the choice to see the dynamics for what they were, not what I hoped they'd become. And if that meant I'd spend Thanksgiving alone this year, or that the next family group photo would have one person missing, so be it. I'd rather sit at my own table in peace than share a meal with people who chew on your soul between bites of mashed potatoes. And no matter what anyone said, I knew deep down that this wasn't the start of me breaking the family. It was the end of me letting them break me. There's a strange kind of silence that settles in after you've done something irrevocable, not the sharp, hollow silence of waiting for a bomb to go off, but the thicker, heavier kind that sits in the room like a ghost, humming just beneath your breath, reminding you that whatever you were before this moment no longer exists and can't be resurrected no matter how many apologies are whispered or how many family photos are dusted off and reframed. That silence met me the morning they boarded the plane to Florida, the vacation I had planned 6 months earlier, the one I had coordinated around Emily's kids' school breaks and Mom's doctor appointments and Mark's insufferable "Can we not do anything expensive this year?" requests, the trip I had bankrolled without a word, thinking maybe, just maybe, we'd all get through 5 days in the same zip code without weaponizing childhood grudges or frozen casseroles or decades of resentment wrapped up in polite conversation. I saw the photos first, not from Emily, because she knew better than to rub it in, but from Mark's wife, Beth, who has always believed that posting curated snapshots of their perfect family moments is more important than actually living them. There they were, in their matching t-shirts, standing in front of a palm tree outside the rental house I'd picked from a list of dozens, smiling like nothing had happened, like I hadn't vanished from the trip like a line edited out of a script. I could tell from the way Mom's hand rested on Emily's shoulder that she had cried at some point that morning. Her eyes were puffy, her smile thinner than usual. Forced in that way people smile when they're trying to hold together the version of reality they want to believe in. Emily looked radiant, of course, in that curated, Instagram mom kind of way, with sunglasses perched on her head and her youngest child balanced on one hip, her phone angled just so to catch the flattering light. There was no mention of me. No, "We miss you, Leah" caption. Just hashtags about sunshine and family time and blessed beyond words. But what really struck me, what burned more than any snub or silent treatment or carefully curated omission, was the realization that they had all still gone. They hadn't called me, hadn't begged me to reconsider, hadn't even tried to hold off until the smoke cleared. They just repacked their bags, adjusted their smiles, and carried on with the trip like my absence was a small logistical hiccup, like I'd simply changed my mind at the last minute and they were being gracious enough not to bring it up. That was when it really hit me, not the anger, not the betrayal, but the deep and devastating truth that I was never as necessary to them as I had let myself believe. I had been useful, yes, a planner, a provider, a problem solver, but replaceable. Convenient. And now that I had stepped out of my assigned role, they were content to let the play go on without me, filling in my silence with forced laughter and plastic smiles and poolside cocktails that I had once imagined drinking with them. But then, late that same evening, just as I was convincing myself that the story was over, that I was done being anything to these people beyond a fading memory they'd dance around during future holidays, I got a message from Mark. It came without warning, without a subject, just a few words in a quiet thread we hadn't used in over a year. "We need to talk. Emily told us everything." I'm starting to understand now. I reread the message 3 times, trying to figure out what he meant by everything, because knowing Emily, that could range from a dramatized tale of digital sabotage to a tearful confession full of half-truths and reimagined history. But the last sentence, that small, quiet admission that he was beginning to understand, hit me harder than I expected, not because I needed his approval, but because part of me, deep down, had stopped believing anyone in that family would ever even try to see things from my side. I didn't reply, not immediately. Instead, I scrolled through our old messages, through years of brief updates and half-hearted birthday texts, through links to football tickets and fantasy league jokes and passive comments about family politics. Mark was never cruel to me, not like Emily could be, but he was a ghost when it mattered, a man who kept the peace by pretending nothing needed fixing, who treated conflict like static you could just turn down until it faded out completely. I realized, reading through those hollow exchanges, that what he was finally starting to understand wasn't just what Emily had done, but what I had endured, the countless times I bit my tongue, the family decisions that were made without me and then blamed on me, the years of quiet labor disguised as loyalty. Still, I knew better than to get hopeful. One message doesn't rebuild a bridge, especially when the rest of the family is still dancing on the ashes. And the next message confirmed that. It came from Mom, just before midnight, likely after too much wine and too many sideways glances from Emily, and it was exactly what I had feared. Not an apology, not even a question, but a plea for preservation. "I didn't know," she wrote. "I thought you were just being dramatic. I'm sorry. But please don't let this tear us apart. We've been through too much." And there it was, the final proof that no matter what I did, no matter how long I had carried the weight of this family without complaint, my pain would always be filtered through their comfort. I was the one asked to hold it together, to make peace, to come back to the table with a smile on my face and a gift in my hands. They wanted forgiveness, not accountability. They wanted restoration, not reflection. And above all, they wanted me to resume my role, to go back to being the version of Leah that kept their lives running without asking for anything in return. But I couldn't. Not anymore. And the moment I realized that, I also realized that there would be no going back, not to how things were, not to the half-truths and quiet bitterness, not to the illusion that love means sacrificing yourself for people who don't see the sacrifice. I had given them everything I could: time, money, emotional bandwidth, and now I was giving them something else: absence. Space. A silence filled not with resentment, but with self-preservation. So when Emily called the next day, no text this time, no pretense of civility, I didn't pick up. I watched her name flash across the screen, watched it disappear, and then watched it light up again. On the 3rd call, she left a voicemail. Her voice was hard, clipped, and low, like someone trying not to scream in a room full of sleeping children. "If you don't give me back the site, I'll go public," she said. "You want to play games? Fine. I'll tell everyone what you did. Let's see how perfect you look then. I played it twice. Not because I was shocked, but because I wanted to be absolutely certain that I had heard what I thought I'd heard: the threat, the bitterness, the raw, unfiltered venom of someone who had finally realized the power dynamic had shifted. She had always assumed that I would fold, that I would step in and fix things, that, no matter what she said, I would eventually come back. But she was wrong, because I wasn't coming back. And I wasn't afraid anymore. There comes a moment, not in the middle of the chaos, but long after the shouting stops, long after the last message is sent and the final phone call fades into a quiet screen, when you realize that the most powerful thing you can offer isn't an explanation or a defense or a perfectly worded clap back. It's silence, deliberate and unwavering, the kind that isn't born of pride or punishment, but of final clarity. The kind of silence that says, "You've taken enough." And when Emily's voice crackled through my voicemail with the sharp edge of desperation laced with threats, "If you don't give me back the site, I'll go public," I didn't flinch. I didn't even get angry. Because what she didn't understand, and what none of them ever truly grasped, was that I wasn't holding the business hostage. I wasn't interested in retaliation or spectacle or some drawn-out war over who hurt who first. I was done. I didn't respond that day. I didn't answer her call, didn't write her back, didn't acknowledge her public posts that began subtly, with vague complaints about family betrayal and unexpected business setbacks, and later escalated into not-so-subtle innuendo. Photos of her packing orders the old-fashioned way, with captions dripping in self-pity and carefully positioned children in the background, little martyrs by proxy. I saw the likes roll in, the sympathy from her mom friends and distant cousins who had never once asked me how I was doing, but were now commenting heart emojis and "you got this, girl" under every post. She was building her own narrative, and I let her. Not because she was right, not because I couldn't correct the record, but because I had finally reached a place where being misunderstood felt lighter than constantly having to explain myself to people committed to misinterpreting me. Instead, I sat at my desk that evening, opened the admin panel for her website, and with a few calm, deliberate keystrokes, I transferred the business back into her name, domain, payment systems, customer records, everything. I attached a note, not long, not cruel, just final. "It's yours. Figure it out on your own now." I hit send. Then I logged out of every shared account, cleared the history, deleted the saved passwords, and let the digital weight of her dependency fall completely from my shoulders. And in that moment, it wasn't power I felt, it wasn't satisfaction or revenge or some sweet sense of vindication, it was release. Later that night, I sat in the living room with the lights low, a quiet instrumental record humming softly in the background, and scrolled through old family photos stored on my phone, images I hadn't looked at in years, not because I didn't care, but because the faces in them told a story I wasn't sure I belonged to anymore. There was one from Thanksgiving 3 years ago, Emily in the foreground, laughing too loud with a wine glass tipped dangerously close to the edge of the table, Mom reaching for a dinner roll, Mark scrolling through his phone while his son climbed over his shoulder. And there I was, barely visible, at the corner of the frame, carrying a tray of stuffing I had made from scratch after a 10-hour workday, smiling without teeth, a smile that said, "I'm here," and also, quietly, I don't know why. That photo hit me harder than any of their words, harder than Emily's insults or Mom's tears or Mark's accusations, because it was evidence, not of malice, not of abuse, but of a kind of soft neglect that wears you down over time, that chips away at your worth by never acknowledging your presence until it disappears. And disappear I did, not in a dramatic flurry, not with slammed doors or viral posts, but slowly, purposefully, like a fog lifting from a field, revealing the shape of the land beneath it, rugged, scarred, but still standing. I deleted the family group chat. I blocked Emily's number, muted Mom's texts, archived the thread with Mark. I didn't do it to punish them. I did it because I finally understood that the version of myself they loved, if they ever loved her at all, was the one who never asked for anything, never challenged the script, never disrupted the roles we had all been cast in from childhood. And I could no longer be that person without betraying myself. The days that followed were quiet, not in the way loneliness creeps in, but in the way peace fills a space that used to be crowded with noise. I walked every morning, longer than usual, breathing deeper, thinking slower. I cooked meals just for myself, with no pressure to impress or accommodate. I read books I'd abandoned on shelves, watched old films with the sound low, let the quiet teach me how to enjoy being alone without being unseen. And then, 5 days after I handed Emily her business back, Mark texted again. It was late, nearly midnight, and his message came through like a flicker of static from a distant station. "I've been thinking about what you said. About the tickets. About everything. I didn't know. I should have known. No demand. No attempt to drag me back into the family's orbit. Just a sentence and a silence that felt, for once, sincere." I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, not because I didn't appreciate the gesture, but because some bridges need time to remain burned, to let the ashes settle, to see if anything worth rebuilding remains beneath them. Maybe someday I'll answer. Maybe not. But for now, silence was still the only language I trusted. It's easy to paint people as villains when they stop giving. It's easy to call someone toxic when they finally say no. But the truth is rarely that neat, that symmetrical. Sometimes the person who walks away isn't the destroyer. Sometimes they're just the first one to admit the structure was rotten from the inside, long before the exit. And as for me, I didn't walk away to hurt anyone. I walked away because staying meant disappearing. And I was finally ready to be seen, even if only by myself.